Oh, okay, my more brothers. This is really not a diss or a critique. This is more like a reflection. Most of the time I've been talking about millennials, it's been lighthearted. Not really angry or venomous against millennials because I have 3 of them. So a lot of times the millennials, I love them like my children. And a lot of you guys that are millennials that probably get angry at me because I say some shit. You get angry at me like I'm your parent because a lot of times I see you guys, children, because I see my children in you. A lot of things that they say and do is similar to a lot of things that you guys say and do. So, and I know as grown men, I shouldn't look at you as children because you are grown men. But that's something that as an old man, it's like an old parent. Some habits are hard to kill, and that's probably one of them. But be that as it may, I've been listening on and off to Kid Organic, and some of it is as far as Jason Black, who I don't get why Jason Black goes in on boomers, because Jason Black is in his 40s and he is now probably, if not quite, but almost officially an old man. Back when I was a kid, if you were past 40, you were an old man. And now with this new Jack thinking, people are saying that people that are 40 are still young. But that is up for interpretation. Really, historically, if you're past 42, you're on the other side of the curve. You're officially an elder once you're on the other side of 42. And I see that a lot of men without children that are in their 40s that haven't gone through the wars or the baby wars as some of us have, don't see themselves as elders, which I find fascinating. But anyway, what I want to talk about is I've been listening to Jason Black, and I think I just listened to Jason Black, and he was going in on baby boomers and how baby boomers screwed up the world. Even though you live in the most connected, most highly functioning society that's ever been on the face of the earth, but we have all, according to the black millennials and black Xers, the baby boomers actually made critical mistakes that actually ruined their lives, and we're all being accosted in our rooms by white folks, and we're all swinging on ropes and trees like we did back in the 40s and 50s. But it got me to thinking, this voracious attack against boomers that are now old people, because most of the boomers are in, even the youngest boomers are in their mid to late 50s, like I am. I am the last cohort of the baby boomers. And most of my baby boomer folks that are older than me are in their 60s and 70s. We are well past our expiration date. So I'm listening to Jason Black go in on baby boomers and what they did to the media, quote unquote, or black media, quote unquote. And listening to Kid Organic talking about the millennials and how the baby boomers have fucked up the black family and the black community. So it got me to thinking about a story that I heard a long time ago. And it was actually a story that came out of the Soviet Union. It was by Khrushchev's. And he says, The Tale of Two Letters. So I looked it up on Google. Google's your friend, millennials. Remember that. So I want to read you the story that Khrushchev told about the Tale of Two Letters. Now, Nikita Khrushchev, for you millennials that don't know who he is Stalin's successor in the Soviet Union. And he's the one that oversaw the last half of the Cold War, and he oversaw the Cuban Missile Crisis. In fact, he's the one that has always been seen taking off his shoe and slamming it on a podium, saying that the Soviet Union would crush America. But be that as it may, this is the story of the two letters coming from Khrushchev. So here's the story. Stalin, knowing that his time was short, and that Khrushchev would be his eventual successor, summoned Nikita to a very private meeting. After telling Khrushchev how lonely it could get at the top, Stalin said, "I have left 2 letters containing my wisest counsel in the bottom drawer of the desk. Do not open the first until things are totally terrible. The second letter should only be opened when you are sure there are no answers to your problems, when you are despairing." Khrushchev took over and enjoyed a Russian honeymoon. Then followed trouble. A failed harvest, the 5-year plan was 2 years late, and many rubles short. Plotting by his political enemies, at 3 a.m. one morning, Khrushchev broke down and opened the bottom desk drawer, and he read the first letter. Its message: "Blame everything on me," signed Stalin. That's what Khrushchev did successfully in a major party address. All the troubles of the present were pinned on the policies of his predecessor. It worked. The pressure was off for a while. The second honeymoon was brief. Hostilities along the Chinese border, another lousy crop, and a humiliating Cuban Missile Crisis did very little for Khrushchev's job rating, and even less for his own peace of mind. He was down. Then he remembered the bottom desk drawer. Making certain he was alone, Khrushchev quietly opened the envelope and read the one-line message: "Write 2 letters. Signed, Stalin." Now that is a very famous story, and from all accounts that people and historians have gone over, that it is probably true. And I think they have read the actual letters that Stalin actually wrote to Khrushchev. And looking at history, that story has been repeated over and over and over again, or that actual account in circumstances has been repeated throughout history. You can actually see it. People don't change. Circumstances and environment change, but people don't change. What does that have to do with the current situation in millennials? Now, at the very beginning, when the millennials in the 80s were growing, and boomer parents were raising these children to be exceptional, the best and the brightest, give them everything, education, child care, whatever, lots of money was thrown at millennials. They changed the way they were schooled, the way they were taught, the way they were socialized. Everything was changed for millennials. The mistakes were made, obviously, but they weren't mistakes out of malice. There were mistakes out of love and caring. More millennials are educated, have more formal education than any other group in the United States that has ever lived. World War II generation, the literacy rate was about 50%. Less than 9% of males, now I'm not even talking about black males, but males ever graduated high school. Only 20% of males, period, once the World War II generation, ever got a high school diploma. Amongst boomers, it improved to about 50 to 70%. With millennials, the first generation of damn near 100%, I think it's 97 or 98% of all males, of all people, have at the very minimum a high school diploma. May not have graduated, but they have a high school diploma. More millennials have college educations than any other generation ever in the history of the United States, possibly the history of the world. Does that guarantee a utopia? No. Are they in debt? Yes. But the thing is, a lot of this stuff was not done out of malice. It was done out of love and caring. And human beings do make mistakes, boomers especially. And a lot of stuff that you hear from boomers is not malice, it's disappointment, not only in the children themselves, our children themselves, but also us as parents. And we're probably more disappointed in ourselves than we are in our children. Even though sometimes it doesn't sound like it comes out that way. But let me get back to the tale of the two letters. Now, through the 90s, 80s, and 90s, and even the early 2000s, I would say even the 2000s, most millennials had lived a carefree life for the most part. Wasn't a lot of strife, wasn't a lot of headaches. If you wanted to live with your parents, you could. If you could find a job, you know, jobs were fairly plentiful. There was lots of things to do in the early 2000s. And for the most part, life was good. What the boomers said about the millennials basically blew off. Because your life was good. You didn't have to listen to your parents or your grandparents. It wasn't necessary. Life was good. You had a honeymoon. Just like Nikita Khrushchev, you had a honeymoon. As you started entering your 30s, life got real. Delayed maturity, adult debt, trying to get housing, trying to build families, all that stuff that every other group has gone through, all of a sudden you're behind. And now all of a sudden now people, your peers and your parents are judging you or looking at you. Your approval rating, just like Khrushchev, is plummeting. There seems to be no answers. A lot of millennials are unhappy because there's a real crisis after 2008 about pensions, jobs, and your future. What do? What do I think that you're doing right now? I think that millennials are going to that bottom drawer, opening it up and pulling out the first letter and opening it up and said, blame everything on us. Signed, the baby boomers. So everything you hear is the baby boomers' fault. Integration was caused by the baby boomers. Lack of jobs is caused by the baby boomers. We're in debt because of the baby boomers. They forced us to go to school and acquire all this debt. The baby boomers are sucking up all the jobs, and since they're in retirement, they have all the homes. Since they're in retirement, all the retirement funds are going to the old folks, which are the baby boomers. So as soon as the baby boomers die, all will be well, because they are the one cohort, the one generation that fucked up the whole entire country, and everybody's on that bandwagon. It's the baby boomers' fault. It's the baby boomers' fault. It's the baby. If they hadn't marched, if they hadn't gone through civil rights, if they hadn't helped promote feminism, if they hadn't changed the family, not thinking that the boomers weren't in charge when all that stuff actually came about. But that doesn't matter. What Ronald Reagan did with the taxes and the gold standard and all that stuff was the fault of the baby boomers. Fair enough. That's what the letter says. Blame everything on the baby boomers. And now everybody's listening to you. And the pressure's off. And you're going to get a new renewal. You're going to get a second shot, because your approval rating is going to go back up, because now all your sins are being dumped upon your predecessors or your parents, which are the baby boomers. Which the baby boomers are too old to fight back, and secondly, too old to really care. Like I said, most baby boomers like me are past our expiration date. And what I call living on golden years of borrowed time. A lot of my cohorts died in their 30s and 40s, and some even in their 50s. And the ones that are older than me are passing on as we speak. We are actually already too old to have an impact on what goes on in daily life. You blame us for not handing the ball to you, when the ball has always been in your hands. But since it's a ball that you don't like, or it's a ball that's difficult to use, you want to drop it on the ground and pretend that the baby boomers didn't give it to you, which is fine. That's what the letter says. Blame it on us. Sign the baby boomers. You're doing exactly historically what groups and people have always done. Blame it on your predecessor. Now, it comes to the second letter that you haven't opened yet, because the Generation Zs are right behind you. They're the last group, and you're raising Generation Alpha that are just starting to come online. They're babies now. You guys are, your last cohorts are in their mid-20s. Your oldest cohorts are in their 30s, in their mid-30s, and closely approaching that 40-year mark where the Xers are now. And at 42, I say at 42, you cross over into eldership. So now you have a very short time to actually prove yourself and write your legacy. And with delayed maturity and instant gratification, your legacy is being written as we speak. And sooner or later, there won't be enough boomers to blame, because reality will be sitting squarely in your lap. That ball that you say that you don't have, that you refuse to pick up, or say that you refuse to have, will be sitting in your lap no matter what. And the vibe or the goodwill or the good graces or the honeymoon as Khrushchev experience will be short-lived. The boomers haven't said very much about you blaming stuff on them. They haven't said very much because they know what you're doing, and they've lived long enough to know what's going to happen. That what you do to your elders, and that's one thing that, because they are young and their maturity is delayed, haven't figured out yet. What you say and what you do to and about your elders, you're teaching to your children, and you're teaching to Generation Z, which are your proteges that are right behind you. How you treat us, what you say about us, what you do to us, even though we're old and soon to be very helpless and very vulnerable, is a blueprint what will be done to you. Boomers have had a very rich history of taking care of their parents, or taking care of their elders, or seeing after their parents. Not always well, but I'm saying is they have that history. Not all, but most. And we have had a history of spoiling our children, which is you. Now the ball's in your court. What are you doing with your children? What are you doing with your families? Are you making them? Are they well? Are they built? Are they solid? Avoiding the ball, not getting married, not having children, is a temporary way out. It doesn't mean that you won't be judged for what you didn't do. Because if you didn't make solid families, you didn't bring up solid children, you didn't develop solid citizens, you didn't plant the corn, you didn't plant the crops, so there will be a harvest. When it comes to the point where there is no harvest, there is nothing to eat, you will be judged by the people that come behind you. And what will be worse is not that you failed, or not that you made mistakes as the boomers have, is that you failed to try. And I really don't want that to be the legacy of the millennials, because the promise is too great. The environment is too rich. And you should be the greatest of us, not the worst. So when you get to be 42 and you're on the other side and you look back, and you're going to wonder where your life went wrong, you're going to have to go to that desk, to that bottom drawer, open up that drawer, unseal that letter, and read. We have prepared for you already, which all boomers know that letter is there. It's going to say the same thing that Khrushchev saw, that Stalin knew was coming. It's going to say, prepare 2 letters. The thing is, what's going to be on that second letter? Because what he's telling you and what we're telling you, Father Time is undefeated. You won't be young forever. And at some point, you are going to be where we are now. And you are going to be judged on what you do now by the people that have come behind you, just as you doing to us. What you say, how you treat us, and how you judge us is how you're going to be judged, because eventually you're going to have to open up that second letter and prepare 2 letters. You've opened up the first. Now's the time to think about what you're going to write on the second. Something to think about. And as an old man, it's something that I have pondered for a very long time. What are you going to do? What are you going to say? What are you going to write when you're in my shoes? Because it is coming. And by the grace of the Creator, you're going to get there. Because I always say, getting old is not for sissies, but it sure as hell beats the alternative. With that, that's all I got. This is BGS out, and I will talk to you guys, hopefully, on the next one.
You know, when Khrushchev was forced out, he sat down, he wrote 2 letters and gave them to his successor. He said, when you get yourself into a situation you can't get out of, open the first letter and you'll be saved. And when you get yourself into another situation you can't get out of, open the second letter. Well, soon enough, this guy found himself in a tight place, so he opened the first letter, which said, blame everything on me. So he blamed the old man. It worked like a charm. He got himself into a second situation he couldn't get out of, and he opened the second letter. It said, sit down and write 2 letters.